Thanks, Lorelai and Kara, for setting everything up for today, and also for your introductions and acknowledgement of the lands that we're on, and why we're here and what we're setting out to do today. This is a space for you. We've created it in response to what we see as need, and at the moment, like, wow, 104 of you showed up today. Thank you. We know that it takes a bit of effort just to be here, to arrange for that to happen. So thank you for making that happen here. Today we're looking to meet others who are doing what you're doing. That's a part of what's happening today. And very practically, how some of that might happen is through the chat function. So if chat is new to you, in most apps, you'll see, if you have your mouse or your pointer somewhere on the screen, you'll see a bar that has mute, stop video, participants, and chat. It looks like the little bubble like we used to see in comics. So if this is all new to you, when you press that chat button, you'll be able to see a pop-up of where people are writing things, and you're able to write over there too. You'll see a cursor blinking, and you can write in there. An important note, if this is new for you, you'll see that you're typing a message to everyone. That'll go out to everyone. Another piece that people might want to use if it's comfortable for you, and if it's something you're feeling called to do, is it's possible that you can meet each other there. So find the people, so if you see someone who it looks like they're doing a little bit of what you're doing, take a little note of that, that maybe you can reach out to them at some point and try to find them. What we'd like to use the chat function for as well, thank you everyone who's introducing yourselves. It's really helpful for us to see. It's helpful for me to see. I'll introduce myself. My name is Lori Clairhout. I'm facilitator today. I am a former and current colleague of Dr. Hansen and also of Kara. I have spent some time working at Athabasca University, and at the moment I'm popping in just to help out with this call. I come from Treaty 6 lands. I grew up just north of the Four Bands at Muskwachees in Wetaskiwin, and I'm currently in Athabasca at the borders of Treaty 6 and 8, and just on the south bank of the river. So I know that there are some people here who will recognize that vision, that the place where I am today. So part of how we'd like to use the chat as the larger group is for you to put your questions in there. So we're coming on to the point of soon introducing all of the panelists today. They have graciously put they've arrived here today, and they put their contact information on the slides, the handout that you should have received in an email earlier, and that you'll see coming up. They put their contact info there because they're interested in talking to you, in hearing from you. So those are two ways of getting in touch with them. Really, as we're going today, please put any questions that you have in that chat. Kara will be monitoring the chat, and as we carry on and I stop talking, the panelists will be answering questions that we've gleaned from the ones that you sent. So we've tried to consolidate the questions that people have sent in, and we'll be asking them to the panelists. To the panelists yourselves, I'll be directing certain questions to you. It's reasonably random. We feel like any of you could jump in if someone's answering a question and they're finished talking and you have something to add. Please jump in with that. We're very much interested in sharing information today. And with that, I think that we're close on all of the housekeeping moments. Thanks again, everyone, for muting while you're not talking. We do encourage you to speak up when in those moments. And I just also like to note that there is potential for a more focused follow-up session. We had 200 people sign up today, and I see we've got 108 here already right now. There's interest on the topic. And so as things come up, if there are things that are pressing for you that you might like to see in a future talk like this, please let us know or reach out to Kara, respond to the email that came through to you. And again, this meeting is being recorded, and a part of that is so that we can help you along the line. If things come up today that you weren't quite able to reach during the pace of the call, you can go back and refer to it. And also for folks who weren't able to make it today to see it. So that said, we do appreciate those of you who've turned on your cameras. If that's something that's comfortable for you, please do. It helps us to see each other and continue that connection. And if it's not something that it's not your thing, that's also just fine. So I think we'd like to carry on. We've got a tiny poll, again, just in the sort of getting to know you moment that Kara has prepared, just to get a bit of background on where you're at with your grant applications process. So Kara, when you've got things lined up, you could pop that in there. So there's the first poll. The question is, how many grant applications have you submitted? If you haven't done any yet, that's great. That's the first little bubble. 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 10, or more than 10 grant applications. And I'll let you take just a minute to count that up and to select where you're at with that poll.
Looks like the numbers have stopped moving here, so it looks pretty even. Some have not submitted any yet. About a quarter, 1 to 2, a few 3 to 4, and then 20%, 5 to 10, about 20% more than 10. So quite a mix here. Okay,
that's great. All right, so we're spanning kind of from folks who've just started out. They've done a few. Here are the results. Yeah, thanks for that, Kara. So we've got, a bit of a mix across the board today. So again, for our panelists, you might even recognize people on the call who you've helped out with grants before. We've got a spread. So if you're on a call and you have not done a grant application before, you're not alone. There are other folks here who are in the same position as you, and some seasoned grant appliers or applicants. You also have a cohort here. And then the next question, which, how many successful grants have you received? None yet, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 10, or more than 10. And I'll say here, as someone who's been on the asking end of grants and not receiving from time to time, I fully understand the frustration there. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that moment. And also the other end, when the grant comes in and you're feeling that joy, you can go ahead. I just like to have a little note that the panelists are here to answer your questions and not commiserate on, say, potentially like particular projects. If you're honing in on somebody here who you didn't get a grant from, it's not the place today to discuss that. We're looking to help each other out here and have important learning. Okay, so the results are in. It looks like we're 64% of people have had no successful grants received, or they've had 1 to 2, and then we've got a few here, 3 to 4, 5 to 10, and more than 10. So it looks like we've had the people on the call. We have a lot of folks who've applied a lot, and a lot of folks who haven't possibly received the sorts of grants that they've been looking for. So again, you're among your cohorts wherever you are here. So I'd like to move on now to introduce the panelists just quickly. I'll give the name of who's representing which agency, and then I'll let them have the 3 minutes. Panelists, the question that we're looking for you to answer is, through your organizational funding streams, what changes and opportunities are you trying to enable, and/or what challenges are you hoping to address? Now, each of the panelists, I'm giving you 3 minutes. Kara, do you have those panels prepared? We'll put those up and we'll start where you're at.
Yep, I have. So who goes first?
Let's start with the list that we had, the Alberta Real Estate Foundation. So today we have Sarah Stubing. She's the Grants Program Manager at the Alberta Real Estate Foundation. And she'll be speaking today. She's also supported by her colleague, Tegan Kopek, who's here. So Sarah, go ahead when you're ready to answer that question.
Awesome, thank you so much. Very thrilled to be here. What a brilliant idea. 2-year answer. We celebrated our 30th anniversary last year, and we held quite a few conversations with stakeholders and industry to kind of get a sense of the landscapes. And number one thing we heard is that we are living in changing times. We are seeing social and cultural changes, environmental, climate change, financial changes with inflation and interest rates. So really where the foundation's at and what we hope to achieve is we really want to partner and fund projects that are examining the impacts of these changes on our province, on our industry, and support the efforts that help industry and by extension, the people they serve, keep pace and adapt to these changes. As you see on the slide, the Alberta Real Estate Foundation exists as an entity under the Alberta Real Estate Act. So we're mandated to invest in education, law reform, research, all related to real estate that benefits industry and Albertans. We have 3 funding streams that we hope allow us to be nimble and responsive to the needs on the ground. So that's sponsorships, development grants, and investment grants. And we're really fortunate to be able to work with and partner with so many different kinds of organizations doing so many different kinds of things. Quick kind of rundown of a couple is the wonderful work being done by Rural Development Network, looking to work with developers and rural municipalities, identifying policy barriers to developments in these communities. The Extraordinary REIT Institute, working with BIPOC youth, introducing professional opportunities in real estate. Lots of research on different housing models like cooperatives, but also condos and acreages, as well as changes to the built infrastructure. So green infrastructure, energy efficiency, the impacts of radon as we move to electric vehicles. So we're very unique that way, that we can work with so many different kinds of people looking at so many different kinds of things. And finally, I'll just say that beyond providing funding for important work, we just want to ensure that we use our unique perspective of having kind of a bird's eye view of the province to help connect people doing good work with others doing work on complementary topics, or with resources or materials or even funds that might be of interest. We also see a need to introduce and help groups utilize the real estate industry as this network that spans the province and get important information into the hands of Albertans. So we talk a lot about being more than a funder, that we really want to be a connector and a convener when possible.
Thank you, Sarah. That was exactly 3 minutes. Woo! Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for speaking about community. I think that's something that's important to everyone who's here today. Next up, we'll move to the CMHC, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Today, we have Sandy Price, who's the Outreach and Program Development. Did I get that right? Outreach and Project Development.
Outreach and Project Development.
Thank you. And Sandy today is supported by her colleagues, Rachel Burgermeister and Ami Wu. Sandy will be speaking today, and right now for your 3 minutes on the question, through your organizational funding streams, what changes and opportunities are you trying to enable, and or what challenges are you hoping to address? So Sandy, over to you when you're ready.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm going to need 3 minutes, but we'll do this. So,
sure.
What was really interesting was this idea of CMHC and what it entails. You know, when I saw this slide the first time, I went back to Kara and I said, "Wow, you know, like thinking about that. You know, we were established after World War II as a housing organization to provide." You know, thinking about the influx of housing needs after the war. When I think of CMHC, I think of the team that I work with, and that's on the National Housing Strategy, which was launched in 2017, a place to call home, which was designed to help us achieve this big aspiration that we have, is that by 2030, everyone in Canada will have a home that not only meets their needs, but is one that they can afford. Almost 2 million Canadian households are in core housing need. And, you know, so that core housing need is defined as those households that fall below one of the standards for adequacy, suitability, or affordability. So when we think about affordability, if you're spending more than 30% of your pre-tax income on housing related costs, which I think is a really low number. I think most of us are spending more than that right now, especially with thinking about heating costs and interest rates and everything else. But that we want to address this idea of ensuring that everybody in Canada has a home. Affordable housing is a cornerstone. I like to call it essential infrastructure of our communities. You know, if we want to talk about sustainability and inclusion and that concept of a complete community, affordable housing is one part of the housing continuum that I think that often we don't see, especially in rural communities. We really struggle with this complement of being able to achieve. So we designed the National Housing Strategy as a toolkit with complementary initiatives. Some of them are funding, as you'll see here, and we may chat about them, to address those challenges across that housing continuum. But we also have lots of opportunities for research, data, demonstration projects, sector initiatives, as well as I said, those capital funding programs. And this vision goes beyond just a roof over our head. It involves people, communities, partnerships with the community housing sector, cooperatives, governments, municipalities, provincial governments and territories, the private sector. You know, we're looking at how can we deepen our relationship with the private sector to help us achieve this goal, and academia. Sorry, I said that wrong, but yeah. So absolutely, I think I'll leave it there and then just move into the question period as we go. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you,
It's weird not
Sandy.
to have a slide deck here, so I'm just winging it is really strange. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for winging it today. That's super, and you'll have lots of space later on to answer questions with other things that are on your mind. So we'll move ahead to Prairies Economic Development Canada, or PrairiesCan. Today we have Elliot Hewitt here. He's the manager of community initiatives, and he's supported by Heather Schmidt, senior business officer. Elliot, when you're ready, I'll invite you to take over and to answer the question.
Yeah,
the question
Sarah.
through your, yeah, you've got the question down, right? Go for it.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't aware, Prairies Economic Development Canada is actually, we've been around for over 30 years under the name Western Economic Diversification. We changed, we actually have a new department now that is focused on the prairies. Our BC colleagues have now got Pacific Economic Development Canada. So we've got a history of over 30 years working with communities in Alberta. I think the name change really highlights a change in focus for the department, though, from diversification to economic development. And if we're talking about what challenges and opportunities we're trying to address. Really, from my standpoint, there's two big ones. We are really trying to increase the amount of federal funding that is flowing out to rural communities. Traditionally, we've been focused, I would say, very much on the larger urban centers in Alberta, Edmonton and Calgary in particular. And there is a goal to try and increase the amount of funding that we have out in the rural areas, not just our own, but also other federal departments. So if we think about some of the roles that we have and some of the funding streams, we are obviously focused with our business scale up program on helping businesses that are looking to scale. And the key on that one is scaling. These are not startup businesses. These are businesses that are really taking off. Our regional innovation ecosystem funding is really focused on the innovation side of things. If you think about post-secondary institutions and a lot of the R&D that comes out of there, how do you get that into the commercial space? And working with venture capital, with incubators, accelerators, all those types of funding are done through that program. And our new program is the Community Economic Development Diversification Program. This is brand new for us. It's really taking a place-based approach, working with communities directly to identify what their issues are, and seeing, again, leveraging funding and working with them to develop solutions to help address their needs. So very exciting. We'll have some more time to talk about some of our priorities being recovery from the pandemic, growth and transformation of your communities, and also inclusivity. How do we help those people that have traditionally been challenged, if I want to put it mildly, in either starting businesses or being participants in our economic growth? We want to make sure that they have increased opportunities. And while I know I'm a bit over, I do want to give a shout out and ask Julie Skrepnik. Julie is my counterpart and manages the community initiatives team out of Edmonton. We've got staff now based in Grand Prairie, Fort McMurray, and Lethbridge. And between Julie and myself and our team, we're actively getting out and meeting people. So Julie, if you can do us a favor, throw your contact information in the chat. She's another avenue. Both myself and Heather and Julie, we can connect you up with more information about our programs. I'll stop now.
Thanks,
Super.
Elliot.
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. And just a reminder to everyone that in these slides are our contact information. So if you're feeling a connection and you'd like to reach out to someone who's speaking today, please do that. That's the reason that the contact information is there. So we'll move on now to the Government of Alberta. Today we have Laurie Campbell, who's a Community Grants Coordinator at the Ministry of Culture, and Angela Schreiner, who's in charge of CFEP at the Ministry of Culture. Now, Laurie, would you like to jump in and give us your 3 minutes to start?
Sure, thank you. I'll speak first to CIP and then Angie will speak more to CFEP. I just want to thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to speak today. We're really happy to have this opportunity to spread the word about community grants available through Alberta Culture across Alberta. And we hope you'll reach out to us if you have any questions after the session today to see if you're a good fit with our programming. The main thing that we do in community grants is offer community grants programs for projects in the areas of arts, culture, community heritage, recreation, sport, diversity, and inclusion. The two key programs being CIP. CIP has 3 distinct funding streams: project-based for local projects up to $75,000. This would include things like even community events, or perhaps purchasing a vehicle for an organization, or other equipment or one-time type funding. I work primarily on the CIP operating grant, which is funding that is intended for small to medium nonprofit organizations addressing social issues. So within the definition of social issues for CIP operating, it would be focused on things like shelter, emergency shelter, food, and other basic needs. So we're looking at individuals that are in crisis or that need specific, hard supports that to help them just through daily living. The CIP operating grant provides operating funding for those social agencies addressing social issues, and certainly we look to support in organizations, but we're not able to do that on an ongoing basis. Funding can be approved up to once every 3 years. So again, the operating grant is intended on those organizations addressing basic human needs. And if you have any questions, you're certainly welcome to follow us up. And I would strongly suggest that you would contact the funders if you're unsure if you're a good fit with the program, and speak with us to see if you get a good alignment before you get into the details of the program. We also have the major cultural and sport event program, that this is more for national organizations operating sanctioned and nationally sanctioned events. So I don't think it applies really to this, so I won't delve into the details. But Angie, if you'd like to pick it up on CFEP now and continue on.
Thank you, Laurie. Thank you for having me and letting me speak to the Community Facility Enhancement Program. I'm the Community Grants Officer for the rural communities, and I also have two colleagues with me who also help me support these grant applications throughout the province. The purpose of the Community Facility Enhancement Program is to foster healthy, vibrant communities across Alberta. The focus of the program is on local facility enhancement needs and working in partnership with eligible nonprofit organizations to assist them with the acquisition, construction, upgrade, or redevelopment of public use community facilities. The CFEP program is a matching grant program. In other words, organizations would need to contribute up to 50% of the total cost of the project, and the CFEP program could potentially help you with the other 50%. There are 2 funding streams in the CFEP program. The first one is the CFEP Small Program, where organizations are eligible to request up to $125,000 towards their project. For projects that exceed that amount, you could apply to the CFEP Large funding stream for up to $1 million in matching funds. In both of our programs, we look for projects that are shovel ready. So in other words, we want the applicant to have as much of their matching funds in place as possible. We do look for shovel ready projects. In order to be eligible to apply, you have to meet one of the registration criteria that's listed in the program guidelines. So organizations that are registered under the Agricultural Societies Act, First Nations and Métis settlements are eligible to apply. If you're federally registered, you may be eligible to apply. Organizations can contribute cash and donated labor or donated services or donated equipment and materials to help them get to that 50% match. We've got specified hourly rates that we would allow you to use to help you match that grant. Organizations who are successful in receiving funding through the CFEP Small Program would have around 18 months to complete their project. If you're in the CFEP Large program, you would have about 30 months to complete your project. This program is heavily oversubscribed, so it can be very, very competitive. What we look for in projects are projects that provide a broad benefit to the community, that demonstrate community involvement, and are accessible to anyone.
Thanks, Angela. I'm just going to jump in at the moment here. There'll be more space to talk about those sorts of specifics later on. So thanks for giving a broad overview of where CFEP is at right now. And we'll carry that on later in some of the questions. Julie from PrairiesCan has just dropped her information into the chat there for anyone who's interested. And I'd like to move on to Mitacs. And note my error from before. Hannah Scott is the business development advisor at Mitacs, and she is supported by Rachel Burgermeister and Ami Wu, not as earlier mentioned, the CMHC with Sandy Price, although I'm hoping you're all feeling supported by each other today. So Hannah, I'll hand things over to you to talk about Mitacs.
Great, thank you so much, Laurie. Yes, I was messaging my colleagues on the side, congratulating them on their new position that they hadn't told us about. So hi everyone, really excited to get a chance to come and talk to the group today. I've seen some familiar names and faces in the chat, which is very exciting to me. And I've seen some that I have not had a chance to speak with before, which is even more exciting. So I'm joining today from the University of Lethbridge in Lethbridge, Alberta. If it was a little bit less sunny outside, you'd be able to see our train bridge in the background. But I'm joining to talk a bit about Mitacs programming and how it can apply to rural municipality funding for innovation projects. So Mitacs is a national, independent, not-for-profit organization. We're completely government funded, a mix of federal and provincial dollars. We've been around since 1999, so we've been in operation about 23 years. In that time, we've directly invested over $858 million directly into the Canadian innovation ecosystem. So we are a roughly 400 employee organization. We have 115 people on my particular team, which is the business development advisor team. And my team's entire purpose is to directly link academia and academic talent to innovation projects across the country. Mitacs funding applies to all sectors and disciplines. Municipality eligibility is a bit of a newer one to us. It's only been available since, to my knowledge, since 2020. But the way that our programs operate is we provide both financial leveraging as well as connecting support to academic talent in order to bring on individuals to solve innovation projects from any discipline that you may have. So we have a variety of projects or programs to do this. I won't get too much into the details at this point. But what you need to know about us right at the start is that we are available for all sectors, all disciplines, and we have a 97% acceptance rate for our core programming as well for access to our funding.
Well, thanks, Anna, and thanks for your intro to, I think that your organization is a relative newcomer amongst the others here. So thanks for that synopsis of what you're up to. We'll take a stretch break for anyone who needs it. Getting comfortable in our chairs. Now we know who's all here. I'll be going through some questions, and those are consolidated questions based on the ones that all of you participants have sent forward before the call. So we've kind of grouped some challenges. We've got some questions out from there. I'm going to pose them to certain of our panelists so that they can get the conversation started. And if other panelists would like to jump in with their additions to the answers to those questions, please do. I'd like to start with one of the biggest challenges that we heard from people who have responded to the call is understanding the granting agency's priorities. So they are listed online, and sometimes when we're getting our grant application together, we're thinking, oh, like, do we match? How does this work? So a very specific question, and I'd like to address this to Sandy at CMHC. How do we align our priorities with yours, or is this necessary to be considered for the grant? Go ahead, Sandy.
So we have different kinds of granting streams, and I'm not sure if I was clear on that, but in my direct messages that I've been getting, I'm seeing a lot of that. So we have like two kind of streams under the National Housing Strategy. There's those capital dollars that are bricks and mortar based, like, you know, they're to build the actual housing structures. And then we have a whole bunch of other initiatives under the National Housing Strategy for things like research and demonstrations initiatives and all sorts of cool innovation ideas and all sorts of stuff like that. All of our programs have criteria, and I say unfortunately, that are out of our control. They're typically set by, you know, the ministry, treasury, all sorts of different things that have that. So what we encourage, especially as I'm talking, I see there's a lot of municipalities here, and a lot of the work that I do is with municipalities, talking to them about how to align some of their criteria themselves and their definitions with ours to better stack and leverage the opportunities. So in a nutshell, yeah, like we do need you to kind of fit our criteria, and typically what happens is we see municipalities and provinces and territories align with ours so that you have that capacity. And we also see other funding organizations, especially around housing, like Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the Community Housing Transformation Center, also tend to align their definitions and their requirements with ours as well. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. We seem to be kind of like the bar, if that makes sense, and then others fall into it, you know, to ensure that they're meeting it.
Thanks, Sandy. And I have a follow-up question to kind of tease things out, but I'd like to shift it towards Laurie Campbell at the Government of Alberta. And again, while I'm asking these questions, folks on the call, if something's like burning for you as we're talking about this, please put it in the chat. And there will be a time when Kara can come forward and pose those questions either to the appropriate person or to the panelists overall. So Laurie Campbell, I'd like to follow up. Is it a good idea to pick up the phone and call someone listed on the grant application? Would it be appropriate to call you? And what should, if I were to do that, what should I ask you to make this a kind of like useful conversation for the grant application?
Hi, thanks. That's a good question, and it would probably save a lot of organizations a lot of time if they did exactly just that, is picking up the phone. So for the community grants program, we do have a 1-800 line, 1-800-642-3855, where organizations can call and find out more information about their alignment with the project. So I would expect an organization to be able to clearly understand their mission and purpose and the focus of their programming, and to know what specific costs they want to apply for. Is it an executive director position? Is it for rent and utilities? Is it for an existing program? Is it for a new programming? And I would also encourage organizations to have an idea of what their financial situation is. and who their legal entity is, and make sure you know your legal name. That's something we run into quite often, is organizations don't know their legal registered name. So we may have organizations submitting multiple applications to us, and they're all really only eligible to submit one. So make sure you know your legal name so we can look up and maybe find some of that history, your mission and purpose, the specific request of what you are looking for, and what you might have available to contribute to that. For the operating grant, we go based on your most recent fiscal year. So those financial statements that you have from a most recent fiscal year would be very handy to have, and just a good understanding of what your programming is, and how you are connected in the community, and whether or not your programs are community-wide, whether or not you're speaking and working with other agencies in the community. We do encourage organizations to work collaboratively and in partnership with others, and we don't want to duplicate existing programs. But if there's a specific need or unique gap, that is something that we could possibly look at. So again, absolutely, I would encourage organizations to phone or contact us before they submit an application. There's nothing more disheartening for me to get an application to see that, you know, that it's a recreation organization that is running, say, a gymnastics program in a rural community, and they're applying to CIP operating, which you know is looking for an organization that has a primary focus on a social issue like poverty or mental health or addictions or crisis services. And because they offer a subsidized program to low income or children that are facing challenges and barriers, or economically not able to participate in programming, they're looking to apply for that piece. But because their main mission and priority is not to address a social issue, that wouldn't be a good fit with CIP operating. And I would really be sad to see the organization go through all the work of putting an application together, rather than contacting us with those few knowledge of those first few questions and just seeing how well they align with our criteria. I hope that was helpful.
Thanks, Lori. That sounds really helpful. I'm on that same line of questioning. I'd like to move over to Sarah at the Alberta Real Estate Foundation. Are there any secret code words that we could put in our applications that might make them more likely to be read or accepted? Secrets.
Code words. I don't know if there's necessarily an exact phrase or word. I will say with us, we would be looking for a meaningful connection to industry. And so sometimes I do have conversations, and I will just preface too that I 100% recommend just reaching out and having a conversation with us. We will invite you to apply if we as staff deem there is a fit. We want to be respectful of your time. For sure. But I've had lots of conversations with people who are trying to establish that connection or the impact their project will have on the real estate industry as a whole. And it is rooted in a conversation they may have had with their neighbor who is a realtor. So it's kind of making more of those meaningful kind of system impact changes. We're very, very happy to make introductions to some of the bodies like the real estate boards or associations, if that would be beneficial. Again, wanting to be respectful about how much work is required before actually getting funds for your work. But with that intention in mind, I think is important. And I will just say too, that just with our current board, they're very much interested in that direct connection, not just to the real estate industry, but real estate industry professionals, and how they can be educated or engaged or utilized as that network to reach Albertans and get information into the hands who need it. So I think just that alignment is something that we would be looking at quite specifically right now, particularly with this board.
Thanks, Sarah. That was pretty, I mean, I didn't get like an open sesame or anything like that, but thank you for some of your hints on how to move towards a good alignment. It sounds like that's key, you know, like finding the alignment between your group and the funding that is available. I have a kind of like a wildcard question. Anyone who would like to speak up right away among the panelists, And I'll just fire off 3 questions altogether. Where do you list your funding sources? How would someone get notified as soon as possible in order to make the best use of the time available before the application? And any catalog, database, newsletter recommendations that you might have among grant funders. So is anyone itching to answer that question right away among our core panelists there? Hannah, Sarah, Lori, Sandy?
Yeah.
Thanks, Sandy.
Okay, I've already plunked into the chat a group that I encourage anybody, if you're interested in housing at all, because the expert community on housing hosts, it's a virtual community, and they host a lot of different webinars with it showcases a lot of our research initiatives or the demonstrations that we have funded. And so it's a really good way to learn about what's happening across the country. And I'll also throw in, we have a newsletter called the Affordable Housing News, and it comes weekly, I believe, and it gives you up-to-date information of when programs are being launched, when initiatives are starting, with contact information about where to get more information. Our website is a monster. It's huge. So if you don't know what you're looking for, it's really difficult to do, but this is a nice way to maybe capture. And I believe the Affordable Housing News is broken down into like capital programs, research programs, and other initiatives. So I'll find that link and throw that in there too.
Thanks, Sandy. And again, for our panelists, if you have other ideas, please put them in the chat as well. And there will be there'll be an email sent out after this call. Again, it will have the recording in it, and that will be another moment where if perhaps you've remembered something, you can respond, and we can find a way to disperse that information among our callers and everyone who's interested. On to the next question, and I'd like to address this to Elliot at PrairiesCan. It's a couple of questions together. Can you offer strategies on prioritizing, so knowing whether applying might be worth our time? And if our project kind of fulfills most, but maybe not all of your eligibility requirements, would you still consider our application or proposal? And again, I'm asking Elliot, but if other panelists have feelings on that, please add them to the chat.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, we in the past have done some call for proposals where, typical sort of, you either meet or don't meet the program requirements. With our programming, what we call our core programming that was listed earlier, we want to co-develop all of projects. And so again, as we've heard from some other presenters, the best thing you do is contact us directly. I'm going to throw our, from a website, and we actually have people that will answer the phone, or if they don't answer the phone, we'll check the messages. We will follow up on emails. So, it's not that it just doesn't go into a void. But definitely we want to work with you because unfortunately, a lot of the way we describe things, the way things are written down on the website, we call it government speak, and you need a translator in a lot of cases. And a lot of times when you read these things, you go, well, maybe I fit, maybe I don't. Call us up. That's where the discussion happens, and we can really help guide you. And if you're looking for those magic words or those kind of phrase, like that's the kind of stuff we can help you with. It's not about having a perfect application. It's about having a really good idea about what your project is and explaining that project in plain language. Because we're all, we deal with all kinds of organizations, all kinds of communities. Everybody has different needs and ideas. But if you've got something that has, at the end of the day, an economic development focus, we'll try and help you out. And we don't typically we come in usually at about 50% funding. We're looking for matching funding, but I saw some in the chat room earlier question about laddering or stacking funding. Absolutely. I mean, that's part of what we do, is work with our counterparts with the province and other federal departments to try and find out what are the best sources of funding, whether to work with us, or if we're not able to fund a project, how can we help line you up with other funders as well? So that's I think the role and the key for us is those early conversations, really get a good understanding about what the project is. If it's going to fit for us, then that's great. We'll help you out. That always a conversation is the way to start things.
Thanks, Elliot. That helps. We've heard in a few from a few panelists already that it is the communication, maybe making a contact, or you know, for some of us, screwing up the courage to make the phone call to say, hi, we're this sort of an organization and this is what we're looking for. Now, it's been mentioned a couple of times about laddering or stacking the funding. And I do have a question that's related to that. I'd like to pose that to Angela with your CFEP experience, and also maybe Sandy from CMHC. Given the difficulties with raising funds the registrants have expressed this to us, the difficulty in raising funds, have you seen any novel ways that organizations have raised the matching funding? And are there any other suggestions on how to stack or time or leverage the resources to qualify for matching grants? So Angela, if you'd like to start, and maybe Sandy, if you can jump in as well.
Sure. So under the CFEP program, organizations can use donated labor, services, equipment, and materials to help them match their grant, in, you know, over and above and including their cash contribution. So an example of that might be if they're doing a playground and the playground is, you know, is priced at $100,000, and the playground company will give them a 15% discount off the price. They can use that discount as part of their match. They can also use volunteers if they are coming in to donate their time to help install the playground or prep the surface in, you know, to get the playground in. There are a lot of options available to organizations that don't involve just cash contributions. Other creative ways that we have seen organizations apply for and receive grant funding is to perhaps scale their project back into smaller bite-sized pieces. So, you know, rather than coming to us, you know, with a full request to do a full upgrade, you may want to, you know, do smaller, more priority projects rather than trying to take on the entire amount.
That makes sense. Thanks, Angela.
You're welcome.
Sandy, would you like to jump in from your perspective?
Yeah, like our research initiatives don't typically require like matching sort of pieces. So it would just be under our capital programs. I've listed one that's really good in the chat called the Community Housing Transformation Center. They're a really nice like early stage resource and their program dollars can be laddered or stacked with ours, and same thing with FCM as we move through. For our capital costs, you know, there's been a lot of talk about this. Like, where do we can't continue being the only investor in affordable housing in Canada. And so, you know, in our programs now, you were seeing less and less contributions available just because they're just, you know, there's a lot of need. And as we work through it, so we're trying to find those creative solutions. There's a coming soon, you'll hear about a group called Capital Connect, which I think is going to demonstrate a pilot about how to connect you know, philanthropic kind of initiatives to affordable housing builds, and what are we looking at there? We're seeing that, you know, if we all take the notion that affordable housing is essential infrastructure, we're seeing a lot of private industry come on board and work with us and help finance. Municipalities have a lot of tools in their kits that they can use, and we use those as part of the capital financing. So maybe they waive fees around development permits or provide some tax abatements, or something we have a lot of in Alberta is land, you know, so that land contribution, we see that as part of the capital that a group could bring to the table. So there's a lot of really different and interesting pieces that you can do, including capital campaigns. You know, so my team we're outreach and project development. So we are often that first voice that you can feel free to connect when you have an idea. I have these hopes and dreams conversations. If I know that there are other resources out there, I will, you know, connect you to some of my colleagues in the other communities to be able to say like, hey, this might be a good fit for you. So we want to see projects succeed. So we will do our best to do that. And our team is really well situated to know who some of the players are out there. So that I would encourage you to have those conversations.
Thanks, Sandy. All right, folks, you heard it here. reach out to Sandy if you're looking for further connections.
Go for it. I'm going on holidays right away. No, I'm just kidding you. But we have a team. We have a national team,
right.
and I can get some support to help you. But yes, feel free to reach out. We'll see what we can come up with.
Okay, so again, a common theme. So people in rural communities, if you're feeling a little bit stumped on how to move forward on your grants, reach out to the folks that are on this call, to the panelists, and they can help you. They can guide you.
And I will
yes.
just say, like, echo that too. Like, I do think it is part of the responsibility as a funder to help identify those connections, just because it is our world. We do have these conversations and these relationships with other funders, so we often do have a familiarity of their programs. And so I think it's part of our responsibility. And I'm just wanted to say also, when talking about leveraging, I think it's also important to capture the gifting kind or the non-financial support. My board is often reluctant to be the sole funder of a project, but they do appreciate and value identifying other kinds of support and view that as leveraging. So it's also just important to identify and realize that that's just as important.
Okay, thanks for jumping in on that, Sarah. We haven't heard from Hannah in a while at Mitacs. Hannah, I have a little clump of questions here for you. And basically, like, what are the key features that are common to successful applications? Mitacs, as you mentioned, has delivered millions of dollars throughout Canada. So what are the key features? What is a key error that you might have seen that ends up in applications and they get shunted off into the, are not receiving money pile? And would, say, like a small error in a grant application or maybe an incomplete application cause you to disregard it? And again, I'm asking Hannah, and for the other panelists, if you have thoughts on that, please pop them into the chat.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Laurie. This is perhaps the best clump of questions I could have gotten, because this is something that Mitacs does a bit uniquely, I've found. So for Mitacs funded projects, our projects are collaborative initiatives between academia, an intern, and a funding partner. That could be a municipality, that could be an industry partner, a for-profit, a nonprofit, just that external partner. Because our collaborations are that, or because our projects have that collaborative nature, our applications also have that collaborative nature. So we actually don't recommend that any of our clients even begin or open a Mitacs proposal template before they've had a conversation with the faculty member or the professor that they're hoping to work with. Because that way, because our collaborations have that research angle as well as the economic development angle, well, sometimes it's best to have people involved in the application write what they're best at and right where they specialize at. The researcher can write the research part of the application, whereas the municipality, their strengths would be in the economic focus, the broader impact, the boots on the ground impact that project would have on the lives of the people living within that municipality. So the key to a successful Mitacs project is just keeping that collaboration in mind right from the start. And the projects that I see that have that reflected in the application, like, they're always amazing without fail. So on the flip side of that coin, the Mitacs projects I see that aren't successful, we're very proud of that 97% acceptance rate. But the reason we have it that high is we don't just accept the first version of the proposal that comes our way. Like, we do have standards. It's not 97% because we fund absolutely anything. It's 97% because we provide ongoing support for drafting and sent applications. So one of the largest parts of my role is to provide that ongoing support. I do everything from proofreading to brainstorming meetings. I've had clients where I've sat down in a coffee shop for 3 hours and we've gone over a project design just to make sure that what they submit is of good enough quality to get through review. And on top of that, once a Mitacs project comes back, it goes through a peer review process. So if you submit a project in engineering, it's reviewed by engineers, biology, reviewed by biologists. Once you get the result back, if it's not a yes, you're told exactly what you need to change on your project. Maybe you need more participants here. Maybe you need more scale there. Maybe you need more hands on deck. You're told exactly what you need to change in as many revision cycles as it takes. We don't have a lot of exclusion criteria. The ones that we have are the ones that are absolutely necessary for us. So if we cannot fund your project, that would be a reason that it would get rejected. And usually in that 5% that we see, the reason it's rejected is something was missed during project creation. And if it was missed, it was because my clients didn't talk to me. So
okay.
I hope that addresses them all.
That's helpful, Hannah. Thank you. Again, I'm seeing the through line here is get in touch with your potential funder and see if you're fit, see if you've got everything that you need, and maybe the person on the other end of the phone is someone like Hannah who can say, you can give some advice on where else to go to get things in a good place. So thank you for that. I'd like to move on to more like first-time applicants, if you don't have a track record. Lori at the Government of Alberta, I'd like to ask, let's say someone doesn't have a track record of securing funding. How would they demonstrate that they have the ability to manage the project? And kind of partnered with that is like, what problems do you see with first-time grant applications and how can people fix them?
A lot of times for the CIP operating grant program, we do have to see organizations that are legally registered for 1 year. So within that first year that they're working, I would encourage organizations to record all of their volunteer hours from board meetings and special projects or other things, and just monitor what they've been doing over that course, whether or not they've received any in-kind donations, if they're working in shared space with another community agency, or perhaps a municipality might be providing them in-kind space. So make sure you track and monitor all of those types of things to show that you do have some community support. For organizations, you know, that are new and it's a particularly difficult time right now, trying to generate revenue post-COVID, but we do look at, again, leveraging that funding with donations they've been able to raise and with the in-kind and volunteer hours. But we also look at partnerships or formal collaborations they may be working with other organizations, so that we can see if the community is supporting them or other corporate donations, you know, and those kinds of things are supporting them. But we do want to see them have some ability to raise cash and manage cash. The funding available is, you know, maximum of $75,000, $60,000 is core. I wouldn't want to see an organization that's maybe been able to generate $3,000 apply for a $60,000 grant if they're new, because they wouldn't be able to demonstrate on their financial statements that they have a strong ability to manage that amount of dollars. So I would encourage organizations to kind of start small, you know, dream big, but grow in manageable portions, and don't try to go 0 to 60. As a new organization, you know, maybe have 1 or 2 part-time staff if you're looking to go to paid staff from 0 staff. Ramp up slowly and sustainably if you can, and if you do get a grant, make sure you provide some type of ideas of how you're going to be able to continue or support that initiative going forward. We don't want to see new organizations by providing them one-time funding and then they disappear, you know, because they were only counting on our grant, and then once that ran out, they didn't think about what could happen after that. So, you know, even though you may apply for one grant, you want to always be looking for those relationships and other funding opportunities or partnerships. And there's so many different ways to raise funds now with, you know, online versus in person due to COVID. So reach out and then speak with your other agencies and your similar partners, and or even as a new organization, other organizations that you've maybe heard about in another community, talk to them and see what they worked and what roads they went down and kind of gain that experience. But certainly give us a call, and if find out, you know, from us early on in the process, even if you're not eligible yet, what you might need to be doing or working on for your program. And depending on the nature of your program or service, you know, we would definitely want to see either letters of support or maybe from the municipality and or the schools or social agencies in the community that acknowledge the work you're doing in the community and the community-wide benefits. So I think we've heard from a number of people that we do look for those partnerships and working collaboratively to address problems or issues in the community, that's something we look for, and you could be able to leverage those relationships, even if they're not dollar relationships, dollars provided, but we could leverage the relationships and or support of your organization from those other partners.
That's really helpful, Lori. Thank you. A couple of things that stuck out for me are to dream big and start small, like to build up, and also the partnerships and the community moments seem so important. And I think, you know, living in a rural community, that's one thing that we can do well. When we do it very well. So talking to the people within our community to get that support to move forward then. At this point, it's 11:08 by my clock. We've got another 20 minutes left. You know, we've got another poll, Kara, if you're ready, just to get a sense of where people are at, kind of dollar range that you're considering. Now, this we saw a few points in the responses that people sent out to us. If you have a current project idea, what dollar range are you in? What sort of grant funding level are you looking for? So our categories here are under 5,000, 5,001 to 50,000, 50,001 to 150,000 or 150,000 and over. Again, to tie in with what Lori was saying, sometimes when we're just starting out, maybe we've only been able to raise, say, 5,000 locally, and we're managing that, and looking for a grant that's around that level might be what we're after for when we're just starting out. And also sometimes grant funders are, there's a big project in our community. It was a multiplex a few years ago, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars in raised money and in matching money. So let's take a look here, Kara, if we've got the results kind of coming in. All right, so a big chunk of folks who are here are looking at the big money. So we've got definitely over half looking for 50,000 and up. Just over a third looking at $150,000 and more. And I would say, yeah, it's that 35%, like 1/3 is below 50,000. So that maybe gives our panelists an idea of what people are looking for. And also for the rest of us on the call, like what is happening in rural communities? It looks like we're looking for some money. I see in the chat, right, infrastructure is a huge issue, especially for rural communities. And to follow up with that, we had some notes in what folks had sent in their response email about what sorts of challenges do you identify with, and it's a sort of a why are you here kind of question. So Kara, the next poll question. Which of these challenges do you identify with? Maybe you don't fit the criteria, you're having trouble obtaining ongoing funding, you're lacking the matching funds, or you have a lack of a track record. Those were a few that surfaced for us in when we were consolidating responses from all of you who chose to be here today. So let's see, which of the challenges do you most identify with?
All right, maybe answers are still coming in. Maybe just a couple of seconds.
Sure, sounds good. And I see in the chat that thank you folks who are putting tips in the chat on where we can look. Now, Kara, after the call, are we able to also see the like a chat transcript?
I will have the transcript, so we can pull out the key pieces and kind of arrange them,
sure,
share them back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So we'll be able to share that after the call. Now, response to the challenges, it looks like we're fairly evenly balanced between not fitting the criteria, challenges in obtaining ongoing funding, and lacking matching funds. So that's helpful information for all of us here, I think. And I hope that also shows panelists what people might be coming to you with. These sorts of questions they might be coming to you with is, how do we do this? How do we, like maybe you can help us with capital funding, but what do we do? What do we do once we say have a building and have to move forward? Or the companion question, how do we do the matching funding well? So at this point, it's by my clock, it's 12 minutes after 11. We're here till 11:30. We've got just a brief period of time, 15 minutes or so. to look at questions from the chat or questions if you have a question you'd like to ask in real time right now, please raise your hand. If that's new to you using Zoom, it'll be down in that bar where you muted yourself. There'll be a space there, I believe, under reactions where you can raise your hand. Kara, meanwhile, do you have any questions from the chat that we can bring forward?
Yeah, there were a few, but I think they were answered kind of in our talks or from the people in the chat directly. So if you asked a question and you wanted to ask it again, maybe raise your hand. But I think this one was maybe not quite addressed. So from Emily, do the presenters have any tips on demonstrating impact in smaller rural communities when funders are generally looking for a large scale impact?
Okay, does anyone want to jump in on that?
I can speak to this one a bit, Laurie.
Sure, thanks, Hannah.
So in terms of measuring impact at Mitacs, one of the ways that we've been trying to transition, especially in the past year, has to be really focusing on finding ways to quantify the impact beyond the dollar amount. So find out how we can invest those dollars to get the biggest social impact in response to that particular piece of funding. So one of the biggest pieces of advice that I have for my rural clients is to take a step back and look at the larger impact of what those dollars would do. So for example, say you had a wastewater treatment project. You wanted to get your wastewater treatment level in town to a higher quality. Well, what would that actually do? Yes, it would provide your municipality with safer, better tasting drinking water, but get creative about the side benefits. Would that make your municipality more attractive to remote workers? Would that decrease the strain on your local healthcare system? Would that increase jobs or increase new activity in your community as you bring in those specialists to address that particular issue? So I find a lot of times with these standalone issues, it can be really easy to get tunnel visioned into, here's the problem, it's got to get fixed, or we're just not going to be able to function. But many times the side benefits, it's like this spider web of improvement that can start around these projects, and they can cascade like dominoes into large scale benefits, not just for like the standalone municipality, but for surrounding municipalities, for surrounding farmers, for example. So really, really get creative when thinking about the word impact and what it means for your projects and your problems. And it can actually lead to some really, really amazing downstream effects.
If I can
Thanks,
jump
Anna.
in too.
Sure, Elliot.
Can I jump in on that? I think for us, what I would encourage people is to think about not just the impact on your community, but surrounding communities. And if we're talking about our inclusiveness priority, it's about not geographic communities, but it's about groups of people, communities within there. So women, youth, and all those kind of groups. So again, I agree with Hannah. It's not just necessarily a specific impact. We're looking for economic impacts, but it's thinking, longer term as well, because what we understand and what we know about community economic development, these are sort of longer term impacts, and that's important for us to work with you to identify and articulate that in your applications.
And I'll just add
Great.
to, like, when we're talking about impacts, maybe if it's just a specific geographic area, I'd be looking at just a willingness to share. Can a project, like, will the findings of the project or lessons learned be shared with other organizations that might be interested? Can the project be scaled? Can it be replicated? So it's kind of those questions too, that I'm interested to see if there's that willingness to connect and share and establish those relationships.
Thanks everyone for that. And I just managed to see something pop up in the chat from Miriam at the County of Grand Prairie, saying great advice on impact. And how about any leads on how to measure social impacts? For example, the quantified value of recreation in your community. So how would you as funders be able to grapple with that? Or, do you, and how does that work? Have I stumped y'all? The idea being that, like, how do we put a dollar value on living in a pleasant community that has parks, that has trails, that has spaces that the people who live in the community receive enjoyment from, and might be a draw for people to not just be attracted to your community, but to stay in your community. I can't live in the only rural community where that's something we talk about. is how to keep our rural communities functioning. So is there any space in a grant application for something like the social impacts of your project?
Absolutely. If I could jump in again really quickly, it's a case of not needing to reinvent the wheel a lot of the time. So there's a lot of lack of transparency around some of the benefits, particularly that a social scientist could provide to a community, but this is exactly what they do. They quantify those measurements, they find those downstream benefits, and they are able to present it in a way that's not only relevant to the particular funding partner, but also to any future grant applications that they want to work with. So it's really, it can seem like a very daunting task, and it can seem like something that you just have to learn and you're not getting the funding, and that's absolutely not the case. You can really lean on the expertise of many, many people for that challenge.
All of our funding programs, both capital and research, have social impact pieces, components built into it, and are actually even embedded in the scoring mechanisms. People don't often see that because it's kind of behind the scenes, but we do actually. We want to hear we measure your application on what it means for the community, the residents, the people, and what that looks like. Is it, creating those complete communities with access to transit or the services and amenities that are required for those people. So it is part of it. And certainly in the business case, we absolutely look for those pieces in all of our applications, for sure.
That's really helpful. And Sandy, you mentioned something. I'm going to put you on the spot right here.
Okay.
About your scoring mechanisms. Is that something that, say, when someone gives you a call and they say, "Hey, I've got this idea," is that something that you can talk about, or is this like we're in grade 10 and we're doing a math test?
No, we're trying to be more and more transparent with our scoring mechanisms. Honestly, if you're applying for capital financing, I believe that you have access to those on the portal. And to be able to do that. But when I'm doing presentations to groups, that's something I say, we score, certainly the financial viability is key. We need to make sure that we're creating and we're investing in things like when we're talking about capital financing that is going to maintain and sustain for the long haul. But we balance that with those social outcomes and meeting our priority populations that Elliot spoke about. And so we do have this kind of weight. We're quite upfront in saying, how close are you to a school if you're housing families? How close are you to a grocery store? We want to see those are quantifiable, but they have anecdotal or empirical sort of ramifications. That's not the right word, but implications on it. We want to know that there is that quality of life, and it also helps us meet climate goals if it's a walkable community. So there's ways to measure that in numbers with, say, proximity, but they help meet those greater kind of unmeasurable things that I know, from my own experience working on the other side in the nonprofit world, always trying to have to find how to put those things that are not numbers into an input system. So I feel you. And so we have that built into our scoring mechanisms for sure.
Thanks for answering that. And it's, again, sounding like when we're in our communities thinking of our projects, it's helpful to reach out early on and to get a bit of advice from the potential grant funders on what we can do. And maybe it means reshaping the project in some way, or rethinking it, or reaching out to others in our neighborhood or in our other sorts of communities, not just geographical, to kind of move forward for the grant funding. I see again in the chat, and I apologize, I haven't been able to look at the chat throughout the whole call, and I'll reach out to Kara again in just a minute about questions that have been there. But I see that Paloma Navarro from the Rural Women Entrepreneurs and Technology Program has just popped her information into the chat. Might be another place for some of us to look for a bit of support. Kara, are there any other questions that have arisen in the chat or discussions that you'd like to flag?
It seems to me like we've more or less addressed them, but if you think that's not true, maybe are we going to just open the floor, to anyone?
There was one question about grant writing workshops. Does anybody have any recommendations who offers those in person or online?
Yeah, Angie had put in the chat box earlier, the Community Development Unit within Alberta Culture provides grant writing workshops. They also have webinars and other resources. So if people just Google search Community Development Unit and grant writing, you can find some resources available there. But also for our programs with Alberta Culture, we have webinars on our web pages so that organizations can get additional information. And certainly I would recommend that applicants target their applications and not try to do a shotgun approach that, you know, and just send out letters to everybody. Make sure that if you're applying for funding that you've looked at those specific funding guidelines and you clearly align with the funding priorities and funding considerations and dig deep. I would focus on putting together, you know, a number of quality applications versus a shotgun approach.
That's
Lori, I
helpful,
just
Lori.
put the website back up for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Angie. And also there's another link in here from Brianna Evans. The Alberta Business Grants.ca has a grant writing link. Okay, Carrie, I see your note in the chat. Can some of these links and resources be emailed to the participants? I think Kara will be consolidating some of that and we'll be sending it back out to folks. A question from Edith. Is there one place to get a consultation on what you were doing and to find out where to go for funding? Good question. Can anyone respond to that or consider if that might actually be available? Sarah, have you got thoughts on that? Is there one place to get a consultation on what you're doing and find out where to go for funding?
I don't want to put, oh, sorry, Sarah. I was just going to say, I don't want to put people on the spot, but I did notice that there's a couple people here from the Rural Development Network. They potentially they're a great resource.
Sure. Yeah. Speak up.
Sorry, I saw a couple faces here, so I use them a lot. So
I would 100% echo that. Choose the Rural Development Network.
They're fantastic.
Okay, folks. Anybody here who'd like to speak up?
I'll put a plug in for our Community Futures offices as well, located in a lot of communities. They're a good portal into the federal funding system. Certainly encourage people to go talk to them. I would also just go back to I think the best advice, and this is from a long time ago, is, you know, use plain language. I think, you know, we go back to those, you know, talking about catchphrases or specific, you know, words to use. The simpler, the better. I mean, if you give your application to somebody that has no idea what you're applying for and they can read it and understand it, you're well on your way, I think, to having an application that, because as public servants, we get inundated with applications. And if we can't understand it, if it's one of those, again, if it's a grant where you don't have the opportunity to go out and ask questions, you really have to make sure it's clear and understandable. For us and for Mitacs and others, where, you know, we have this ability to kind of go back and forth and develop an application with you, that's a different process. But if you're applying specifically, I don't think it matters. Think less about those kind of shotgun approach and trying to, you know, fit the best wording and really clearly explain what your project is and what it's trying to accomplish. And that goes a long way to helping staff understand and actually tick off the boxes. So
I think
thanks for that, Elliot.
Excellent point. I would say the exact same thing. Don't try to force your project into a program. You know, if he's right, if we can't understand it, we cannot convey that information to the people who make the funding recommendations and the decisions. So if I can't relay what it is you're wanting, you will not likely be successful. I would definitely call and explain your project and try and get as many details as you can on what we're looking for, timelines, what our expectations of you are.
Thanks for that, Angela. That's helpful too. And Mary from the Rural Development Network, thanks for popping that into the chat there. Is there anything you'd like to say live and on camera? Putting you completely on the spot.
No, that's totally okay. keep me on my toes. But yeah, please reach out. I do suggest going through the info email, info@ruraldevelopment.ca, just because we have so many initiatives we're currently working on. And in that email, provide some context around what you're looking to have support in, or what you're currently looking to develop in your community, or build or looking to have more capacity to develop. And from there, it'll get filtered to the proper team. And then yes, we're always reaching out to rural communities, or they're reaching out to us. So please connect with us. Thank you again, Sandy and Sarah. I don't know where I was in, I was really focused on selfishly focusing on just myself, I think. So yeah, thank you for the nudge.
Well, that sort of encapsulates what we were hoping might happen today is literally coming together, talking to one another. For some of us, it's putting a visual or a name behind an organization that maybe we have felt has been a barrier towards us moving forward in our rural communities. And I see today that that's simply not true. It sounds like from the funding side of things, obviously you've got, you have your own limited capacities. And it also sounds like from your discussion today that you're looking to help. And so by folks in rural communities reaching out to you, we can start to bridge those gaps and to get the funding where folks are most needing it, most working within their communities. We're looking to wrap up. We've just got 2 minutes left. If anyone has a burning question or a last minute note, we have just the tiniest bit of time for that. And I see anyone unmuting to speak. I appreciate all of you being here. I speak on behalf of the group, the Communities in Transition, as a part of this project, that it's been overwhelming, the support from our panelists to want to be here today, and to people in rural communities to be here and listen to you all. So thank you so much, everyone, for showing up today. I know 90 minutes is a long time, and to be kind of on your toes and ready to talk and to help and to find each other. So thank you so much, the whole group here. Would everyone like to, whoever's on, you can unmute and say your farewells. Thanks again to Dr. Hansen with Athabasca University and Kara Shan, who's also with Athabasca University, for putting this on today.
Thank you for bringing us together.
Yeah, yes, thank you, everybody.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks, Laurie.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Yeah, this has been great.
Rosemary. Hi, Rosemary. Thanks.
Hi.
Thank you for all the information. It was wonderful.
Thanks, sir. You're welcome.
I don't want this to end.
Can we have to do it again
and projects?
We'll see what we can do next.
Okay. Bye, everyone.